everybody, it's Safi and Marco, Dish Out on the Movies. Today we are doing an oldie but a goodie, I guess, from the 80s. 1987, in fact. It's called Three Men and a Baby. It came out in 1987, and somehow I missed it, but I think at the time I was a little too busy to go to the movies. Anyway, it stars the three it guys of the times. You have Tom Selleck, Magnum PI, and today he was just in the show on CBS about being the chief of a police force or whatever. I don't remember the name of the show because I stopped watching a long time ago. I think I just watched it a little bit. And let's see, who else? Ted Danson, who was in the show Cheers, which was very popular. A lot of people watched it. I never watched that show. I did watch Magnum PI, but I did not watch Cheers. And Steve Guttenberg, who was in several, he's kind of a low-key comedian. And Ted Danson, for Cheers, that was kind of like a comedy sitcom, too. But Steve Guttenberg was a little bit lower key than that, and he was in some children's movies, one that Marco really likes a lot, and Terror Tower, and then he was in Police Academy, and so they decided, well, everybody will love this movie because these three male it stars of the times are in it. And there's going to be a little girl baby, and it's going to need everything. Diaper change. It's going to need milk because it can't eat anything more than that yet. It's not at the proper age. And it'll be really funny.
Is it funny, though, Safi?
Not really. I don't think I laughed once.
I might have giggled one time or two, but There were some jokes, too, that didn't even pay off. Like, with the shop woman, the woman working in the store, she was like, what you feed a baby right now is critical in its development. And I read that whatever you feed them in the first couple of months, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, you'd think that joke would have, like, a payoff or something where, because they're feeding a baby the wrong way, like, it does something crazy or it turns into a monster or something. Like, that could have been cool. But this movie, the biggest question for me is this the best thing that these three guys could have done together with their talents? I mean, all three of them are like B-plus actors. They're all really competent, but they're really to me, they're kind of one-dimensional. Especially Steve Guttenberg, and it doesn't help with him that he's hardly in the film compared to the other two.
No, I think Tom Selleck was in it quite the most of everybody, and then it was Ted Danson, and then Steve Guttenberg, who was very, very low-key.
Yeah. Well, I think that actually Tom Selleck was the best one. But the thing is that maybe it's just because he had the most stuff to do. So it's kind of unfair to say, like, he's the best when
he had more opportunities to shine.
In general, I thought, the opening of this movie was a disaster.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
It opened the worst way it possibly could have. There was the shitty song where it was like, boys will be boys. Bad boy, boys will be boys. And in the background, Steve Guttenberg is like painting up the apartment, but you can tell that he's not really painting it. He's just kind of painting a little bit here and there to make it look like he's painting it, which is too bad because you'd think that they could just let him paint the whole apartment anyway. Like, that would have been cool if it was actually his artwork that he did. Like, even if it was crappy, because that kind of lends itself to the quality of the movie. It's a very casual movie that doesn't really require a lot. You know, they have this little drug subplot that just pops up and then leaves at a certain point, but that's about it that requires like some big spectacle. This is like an intimate movie, and intimate in terms it's small. Safi.
Yeah.
Well, you say something about the movie. I mean,
Well, it was.
what do you have to say about yourself?
It wasn't funny, but it wasn't. I'm not saying. I don't think it was inappropriate. Except I don't know. They showed the baby and all its nudity, and that was shocking to me. I was just surprised that they did that. It's not that I care.
It was weird, but
that was kind of weird to me. Because I was so shocked. Because this was 1987. This isn't even now, and I think even now it'd even be stricter. They wouldn't be showing all the baby's parts. And
it leads to the biggest flaw of the film. Oh, I mean, not the biggest flaw, but the biggest twist. Because what are movies that have lots of nudity no matter what age, Safi?
Foreign movies?
Yes, Safi. And like last year I watched all these Australian movies that were free on Tubi and Amazon Prime. And one of the the biggest cliches was that they had like naked people of any age, and like there was one where they showed a little girl showering in this one horror movie, and they didn't show it for that long, but still it just sticks out. Like it felt like immediately to me like this is like they're just like showing this baby naked for like it might be like 20% of the movie, right?
Several times I was just I was a little taken aback. It's just I would think it would have been worse back then about showing any kind of nudity of any kind.
It was very weird.
And not as, but today, I think even today they wouldn't be showing all the baby's nudity. I don't know, I could be wrong.
I think they do, but it's less because this it's like it's a prominent focus, and even on the poster the baby's naked. Even on the poster, and it's like what?
I thought all the men, despite the movie, thought they were all very good with the baby. In fact, if I were one of their girlfriends or whatever, and I was worried about how they would be, they all acted like they were very, very careful. And I can imagine when they're doing the movie that the mother of the baby was very close by so she could keep an eye on things. But it just seemed like that they were very caring, careful people anyway. And it seemed like they didn't even have to act to do that, like that they would be very caring people.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's expected. Like, if you have someone in a movie handling a baby, like, they should be handling the baby properly and being, like, a good figure for them.
You could have had it, too. I mean, I can imagine that there'd be an actor who does not like children and would feel very uncomfortable handling a baby.
Would he get cast, though?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. It's just nowadays, you just don't know. They're trying to fulfill so many agendas that they forget how to make a real movie. And something, I mean, one thing it helps to do is to pay attention to detail. And that would be a detail. I mean, notice the movie wasn't that funny, and the music at the beginning was abhorrent. And to me, that's just a small detail, but it's crucial because they do have so many scenes with the baby. Now, the baby's not naked in every scene they do, of course not, but
it's enough to where it's like it's a weird. It's almost like when we went to that Ripley's Believe It or Not museum, and we're going around looking at the different weird statues and things.
That was in San Francisco.
That's what it was like to me every time it happened. But I just think, when you're talking about this movie, it's a comedy movie, so you should be talking about the comedy. And the problem with this movie is that there's not really much comedy at all. I guess probably the funniest joke, it was more so funny because it was kind of cringeworthy, was when Tom Selleck was like, wasn't he having coffee? And then he like tried some of the milk, and
Yeah,
then
so
he
he put
squirted it in his
coffee.
coffee, and I thought that
It
was
was formula though,
that
but
that
still.
that was kind of funny,
Ugh.
and but it not really like that much. Like it wasn't, to me. I think it would have been funnier if it was like throughout the film, that like maybe there's a subplot where he
Prefers to put that in his coffee
Yeah.
instead of some kind of nice creamer.
yeah, and it's like him trying to avoid them finding out, and him being worried like, when's the baby gonna stop having formula so I can't have it in my coffee anymore. Like that would have been funnier to me. But the reason why I brought up the foreign film aspect is because this whole movie felt like a foreign film, right, Safi? Do you agree with that?
I suppose so.
It had a weird perspective, which it makes sense because that's what foreign films have, because they're not American. And I don't care what anyone says, that's the truth. Like,
Well,
you know,
they have a freer perspective.
they have a different perspective. It's a different
Very open
take.
and
But I just mean in terms of everything. Like, as soon as they had that random drug subplot, I immediately thought, is this movie based on a foreign film? Because in foreign films, they have all these random subplots all the time that don't really mean anything to anything. And that's like a cliche in foreign films. Like in this one, they had a weird subplot where one of them, he had an open relationship with his girlfriend, which was and stuff like that. I guess maybe they had to do that so that the girlfriend wouldn't be able to help take care of the baby. But they had all these like random subplots that didn't really have anything to, and then the main stuff was really light and bland. I mean, this whole movie, remember when your sister took us to that restaurant, Safi?
yeah.
Safi's sister took us to a restaurant, and we wanted to go to like another restaurant in the area, you know, like a better looking restaurant, but we had to go to this one. And immediately we went in there, and the food was so bland, it was so boring. I mean, I had fish. The fish was it was hardly done, and it was hardly salty, and then the broccoli wasn't even thoroughly cooked. And like that's what it reminded me of, this movie. Like going to that restaurant with the old people food is what I
The
call
reason
it.
why he says that old people, which might be offensive to somebody, please don't be offended, because it was, I think, my sister was very familiar with it, and it was a place where you got food that was very bland on purpose. I think
Yeah.
they didn't use very many or any spices. They had pie, and that was pretty good, but it was very you know, you wouldn't find anything that was any kind of Chinese or Mexican, anything that was even the regular food, if you want to call it like American home style, or like roast beef or chicken or something. It just wasn't very. There wasn't any fried or any. It was very bland and very under or low cooked, and I think
Yeah.
on purpose, maybe because the people who went there, maybe they had stomach problems or something. You know what I mean?
See,
And-
even you know, Safi.
Well,
Even you know.
My sister died a couple years ago.
Who cares? That
and
doesn't have anything to do with
I
the
know
story.
that, but I hardly ever got to see her. We lived 10 hours away.
But this restaurant sucks, Safi. Do you know what we remember about that visit? We remember how bad that food was.
Well, I know.
It was
And
so bad.
And she just, I don't know. She went out all the time, but she didn't. I don't think she went out to very many different places. I think this was her go-to place.
I was like, I'm I'm gonna cheat the system and get like some fish, a fish fillet of this really nice fish, and get broccoli and stuff, and I'm gonna cheat the system. And then I got it, and it was like, oh.
Well, the
Like
problem
this
is
movie.
this is in Kansas City, in Overland Park, and they have tons of restaurants, tons, with all kinds of different price ranges, but all kinds of different foods. And I would suggest something. She goes, "Oh no, that's no good," or "Oh, I don't think they're open," or "That's too far away," or "I don't know about where we could sit there." You know, there was some excuse, and this is
Lots
one
of
where
excuses.
she was very familiar with. Like I said, I think it was her go-to restaurant.
It wasn't as bad as the time Ellie made us go to
That was another
Hackneys.
relative in Chicago.
Hackneys.
Ugh.
That place was so gross, it made me want to puke.
That's this
Yeah,
restaurant up in Glenview, Illinois, which is suburbs, North Shore suburbs,
And
in Chicago. And my in-laws were, that's their go-to place.
and see,
It's not, it's gone down, I think. It has been pretty good in the past, but I think it's gone down, because what we ordered, I don't remember. Marco has a better memory about this
do.
stuff. I've been there so many times.
we had to sit at a table and wait for like an hour for our food to take out. And not that it's relevant to this review, but I complained about going there because I was like, ew, like I don't want to go to that gross place.
I know, and we had been there. I mean, that's.
And she got mad that I was upset about it, and it's like I was right to be mad. The food was terrible.
Yeah.
It was so gross. I got an ox burger or something, like a bison burger, and it was raw in the middle.
Ew.
And it's
Whoa.
like, oh wow, this is really good food.
Not.
It's really good to starve and not have anything to eat.
Well, and that was another inexcusable thing, because up there, of course, they have restaurants in Chicago. And you might have to drive a little ways, but they still, even close by, they have better restaurants. I hated going to Hackneys. We've been going there ever since, 1977, maybe even earlier. And it just, it had gone down, and I never cared for it.
It's a really unappealing name, too. It sounds like the name of a serial killer's house. Like, remember when George Hackney hacked up his family at the Hackney house?
Well, I think
That's
it's
what it
named
sounds
after
like.
a carriage.
Yeah.
They have the carriage depicted on their logo.
Oh, you like carriages, don't you, Safi?
Well, whatever. But anyway, that's.
Well, you see.
The point is
Well, you
about
see,
the movie.
but you see how bland this movie is too. That we're like talking about other things that have nothing to even do with the movie. Like that's how like just light and fluffy and nothing this movie is. It's so unimpactful.
Well, what the story was, one of the men was the father. He didn't even know about the baby, which I think is ridiculous. But not because he didn't want to, because the woman who had the baby never told him. And she just decided one day she couldn't take care of the baby, so she dropped the baby off at their apartment in a really nice hand carry bassinet with pink in it, and the baby was all clean and dressed and everything. And she said she couldn't handle it anymore, and she was letting the father, who was the guy, their roommate, who was off in Turkey doing a movie. And so that's why at the beginning it's mostly because the person that I'm talking about is Ted Danson. Well, he was the one who was off doing the movie. So the movie was just Tom Selleck and Steve Guttenberg and the baby, and all their problems and supposedly, quote, funny moments. And it was just fair. It wasn't funny to me at all. And I'm not saying that they turned me off and they were inappropriate. I don't think so. I just say it wasn't funny.
It was boring.
It was just there, and you know, you got to look at Tom Selleck and say, oh,
Safi,
wow, that's why all the
gross.
girls were so,
Safi.
because he had the biggest part. And so
Yeah.
Ted Danson was not even in the movie for maybe half of it.
It's too bad because then when he came in, he was like the best part.
Yeah, well, he's a very interesting. He's you have Tom Selleck who solved mysteries. All the girls were
not in
drooling
this
over
movie.
him.
He didn't solve any mystery in this movie.
No, he didn't. And
except for he looked at the note and figured out it was Sylvia's because her name was on it. So
and Steve Guttenberg was a very light comedian.
He was hardly even.
And Ted Danson has kind of more of a range. He's been in all kinds of different things. You know.
Well, but Ted's character was a lot more interesting to where he's like an actor. He's doing stuff, and so they had like a scene with him acting with the baby on him. And what it reminded me of was Tootsie, the types of scenes you'd see in Tootsie, and he had a lot more of an interesting story because it was his baby, and so he wanted to take care of it, and he was a lot better than the other two, but Tom Selleck still kind of was the best because he had the most to do overall. Unfortunately, you know, it really felt not even like 3 Men and a Baby is a good title. And the foreign movie title is even worse because the foreign one is called 3 Men in a Cradle.
Yeah.
Like, that's an even stupider title.
That's a terrible title.
The worst part for me, though, was at the ending. Oh, oops. Wait, I mean the endings. Because this movie ended like 5 or 6 different times. First, they had the ending to the baby thing. I mean, not the baby thing, to the drug thing. And then the mom came back out of nowhere, the girl from Rose Red. She came back and she wanted the baby all of a sudden. And then they're really sad and they go to the airport and they discover that the baby's not there anymore. And then that's an ending. Oh, wait, and no, before all these endings, there was an ending where all 3 of them were happy taking care of the baby together. But then they drive back home, and the baby's there with Sylvia. So that's another ending, because it's like, oh, look, they're going to resolve things now. And then finally it ends with 4 of them taking care of the baby. So it was like 5 or 6 different endings there. And it was dragging on and just feeling like, when's this going to end?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I just didn't have any feeling about the ending one way or the other, except
it was a queer ending
the
too.
Ending, the final ending
with the stupid painting.
I wasn't thinking about the painting. They had a carriage for the baby that had 4 pairs of handles on it, so 4 people could push the carriage at the same time.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was queer.
See, there's stuff like that.
I didn't like that at all, and I did not like the beginning, where they had a party and they were like, "Oh, we can get any girl in the
beginning was confusing. I couldn't even understand what was going on at the beginning because it was so chaotic.
They were having a party, and there were a lot of their friends there, and they were very popular with their friends, and it was the music was horrible. It was just awful. And I was really pissed off. I didn't think I was going to be able to watch the movie. I thought it was so awful because I couldn't stand the way the guys thought they were just like love's gift to the universe or something.
Well, they were, because like this is Steve Guttenberg's most notable film for some reason on IMDb. And for everyone in the movie, basically, this movie is on their most known for. I'm not kidding. Tom Selleck's, Ted Danson's, Rose Red Girls, on all their profiles. What are they most known for? Something, 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 and 3 Men and a Baby. I don't even think it's 3 Men and a Baby. It's more like a guy here and there with the baby, and then drugs with the baby. Like, it's not a good title. Anyways, what would you rate the movie, Safi? In terms of food?
I think I would just give it some French fries, and I
From
like
where?
my French fries. Well, it could be from anywhere. Probably McDonald's or Wendy's, because either one, because I like my French fries kind of a little bit like crispy and browned. And many of these places, like McDonald's and Wendy's, they just make their French fries cooked. They're just barely cooked, but they're cooked, but they don't. I like the crispy, and so in a batch of fries from either one of these places where there's maybe a couple of fries that are like I like to eat them, uh, that's the way the movie was. There was only a few moments that were quote good, and it, but you know, if it was a comedy, which it most likely was, it wasn't funny, and that's kind of not right. If you're making a movie with that talent and for that day, and even now, um, I think Tom Selleck and Ted Danson, they've been in some things where they're in another, you know, they're in multiple depth range. They do all kinds of different things. Stephen Guttenberg, I don't think he's done much of anything, and if I'm wrong, I'm
very
sorry.
one note, and
Very, very sorry,
me,
but that's what it seems like to me.
it's too bad because he's likable, but for
Yes.
some reason in the movies he's in, they're just so one dimensional. Like with Police Academy, the first one's really, really good. It's a classic. But then after that, I hated the second one the first time I watched it. I can't even remember because it was so bad. And then the third and the fourth are kind of mixed. The fifth one is pretty good, and the sixth and seventh are terrible. But all throughout those movies, although he's in them for the most part, I think he's not in one of them. Uh, he's very one dimensional, and it feels like okay, he's supposed to be the main character of this series, and yet he doesn't really grow that much. It just there's just something about movies that he's in where he's just very one dimensional. Even in Casper, the Spirited Beginning, the whole movie he was like a jerky dad who wouldn't he didn't have time for his son because he was working so much, and he was he was probably the best in that one though, because it felt a lot more like okay, this is something different from him. Usually he's playful and fun and funny, but in the Casper movie he actually is a jackass for most of the movie, and so it's cool to see him like that. So now that Safi's fallen asleep for some reason, I'm going to give my food rating for this movie. I completely forgot what it was, honestly, because this movie's so forgettable anyways. Like, I can't even believe I spent 30 minutes talking about it. So, I would give this movie... It's tough, to say the least, because what can you give a movie that's bland but it's not bad? Well, I'll just give it the food from your sister's favorite restaurant, honestly.
I don't know if it's still there either. I don't remember the name.
It was so weird. They had, well, I'm not gonna say, they had a midget as a waiter, and
Marco.
it just felt like another dimension. It felt like I entered the Twilight Zone.
Or it might have been Twin Peaks of Overland Park.
It was really weird, and he was doing like everything. He was like getting the pie. He was doing everything, and then there was like this one waitress, and she did like a little bit. But still, I had a fish fillet. I think it was sole. Remember, you gotta have sole.
Yeah, it
Well,
probably
I had
was.
sole. It was bland, boring, dumb. And then I had broccoli, which wasn't even cooked that much. That's a big pet peeve of mine. I gotta have cooked broccoli. None of that raw broccoli. Ugh, I hate that. And it was still bland. It just tasted like everything tasted like they just like put a little tiny pinch of salt on everything, and that's it. And then I had a baked potato. That was honestly bland too. And then for dessert, I had a piece of pie. And this place was very known for their pies. They had the pie up in the front, kind of like the Cheesecake Factory type kind of does. And the pie was like chocolate or something. And the pie wasn't that bad, but it was still bland. Like, even the dessert was bland. So that's this movie. Safi.
Well,
Do you have anything to say, Safi, as you're dozing off again? Do you have anything to say?
I'm thinking about
You thinking?
the restaurant, and I see the thing about Kansas City. It doesn't even matter which side of the state line you're on, because Kansas City encompasses two states. It encompasses Kansas. It encompasses Missouri. In fact, the Kansas City Chiefs, who are playing right now, they're in Missouri. And the Royals play in Missouri. So anyway, they have barbecue. Kansas City is known throughout the world for its barbecue. We could have had barbecue instead of this bland food. I
We
mean,
could
that
have
would
had
have been
anything.
great.
Anything.
We don't have around here where we live. We really don't have. We live in the desert as far as food is concerned.
They had this one place that looked really good, and it had like a frog on top. And I looked at the menu for that. I was really excited about it. And then you got the text that was like, oh.
And I think the problem is my family just didn't eat a lot of we didn't cook. My dad did not cook barbecue. He didn't barbecue, which was really weird. But they just didn't. My parents were from the Depression. They did not. They were basic. We ate basic. We ate lots of brisket, but we didn't barbecue. I don't think one day we got them like a kettle grill, and we made we had barbecued hamburgers. That's it. But I mean, my dad never barbecued. My mom didn't even discuss it. She was a really good cook, but we didn't eat barbecue. So I guess, when we go out to eat, nobody would think about it. My parents started thinking about it more because they lived on the Missouri side, and there was a place called Zarda's, which is still there, and they started eating there, semi-frequently. But my sister, I don't think she ever really went out and got barbecue. So that's why we were at her go-to place, which was not barbecue.
Safi.
Anyway, that is diverting away from this movie.
Safi, if my relatives came into town, would I say, hey, everybody, you know what I like the best around here? Wendy's.
Yeah.
Let's go to Wendy's.
Yeah.
Let's have some Wendy's chicken for lunch, because that's a really nice place to go to.
Or go to KFC, which is where I like.
Fuck that shit.
Where I like my food.
That food sucks.
But that's really, you can find those anywhere. We don't have any. We live in the desert, and so anyway, this movie was like the desert.
Yeah.
And so,
the desert.
So that's why Marco and I are giving it this kind of food review.
It was dry.
And I'm telling you, this isn't. They weren't inappropriate. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they were bad in a negative way. It just wasn't. It wasn't funny. It's supposed to be a comedy, and it just isn't.
I was kind of like open to it being good too. It's not like I thought it would be like a masterpiece.
No, right.
But
just an entertaining movie.
It wasn't funny. No. And then it was directed by Leonard Nimoy, which was really weird.
That is weird. He must have got confused and thought it was science fiction.
To me, it felt like almost like everyone in the movie was doing the movie as a favor to him. Because this movie shouldn't have even been made, honestly. They should have come up with a better concept, or they should have actually, create a better script based off of the original movie, because I really don't think that the script that they wrote, it was like a foreign film. And I'm sorry, but if you make an American adaptation of a foreign film, you better make it an American film, or else people could just say, well, why don't I just go watch the foreign one? Like, if it's exactly the same, then I should just go watch that one.
Yeah.
So, Safi!
So if you like this video, please press the like button.
It.
And if you would like to be a subscriber and you're not one yet, press subscribe. We love to have new subscribers. And everybody have a nice day.